Sport today is no longer just about performance. Time, pace, competition has become a space, a social, cultural, lived space. A space where different people, different backgrounds, identities, perspectives can meet. In a city like New York, this has become very visible. Sport becomes a tool to connect different social clusters that don't usually intersect, opening up new forms of community, more inclusive, more progressive, more reflective of the city itself. At the same time, the city isn't just a backdrop. It actively shapes how we move, how we think, how we create. And in return, sport reshapes how we understand the environments we live in. Maybe the real shift is this: imagining environments designed around human movement, where sport is not exceptional, but natural, where movement is part of everyday life, not a separate act. So today we'll talk about inclusivity, identity, and the environments we move through, and how sport, and running in particular, can move beyond performance to become culture. We have an amazing group of panelists here today with us. We have Joe Donato, the force behind Orchid Street Runners. You probably are all familiar with it here. It's a community that has redefined running in New York, not as sport you do alone, but as a collective cultural act. Joe, do you want to give a little wave? And then we have Ashley Gilbertson, photographer whose work captures people, movement, and the environments that move through, turning the city into a narrative. Ashley's right here. Michelle Lee, stylist and writer, operating where fashion and running collide, using style as a language to expand who feels seen and represented within sport. Ashley. Sophia Camacho, non-binary runner and coach, bringing a perspective that challenges traditional structures of sport and pushes the conversation around inclusivity into something lived, not just stated. So like I said in the intro, for a long time, running has really been defined by performance, pace, distance, and competition. But I'll open the first question to everyone, and whoever wants to answer first can go ahead. Do you feel that definition is still relevant today, or is running becoming something else entirely?
I think personally running is becoming something else entirely because it's kind of an embodiment of something that feels good.
Wants everything to be polished, or they like to manufacture realness, but with running you really can't. You just have to run. And I like that you just let yourself try something and you run as best as you can, and it's not as much about the performance anymore, and it's more about giving yourself the space to try and not be perfect.
Yeah. Joe, where do you see this sort of shift in performance in the community space?
Well, I can compare it to early years doing the OSR races, where the people that attracted were kind of solely the people that had the performance ability to be standouts in even normal races. And over the last 12 years, we've seen the social element of these races expand that field of runners beyond just performance and into just human connection, with running being the common thread that kind of ties everything together, regardless of your status or, your aesthetic or where you come from. That's been a big change.
So what do you think the running space looks like then, without, let's take away the performance element of it all? What does that look like, future and also present tense?
Well, I think the performance component will probably always have a place. Its importance will probably fluctuate, but I think the discovery in the last 15 years or so through the running group culture is that people just want a reason to get together and have a good time. And I think that has become the priority for most of the events that we see in New York. It's, the performance is the cherry on top, perhaps, for some people that are still kind of in the old mentality. But I think majority of people just enjoy sharing space and stories about what they just did in a race or an event.
I can add to that as well. I think the performance element isn't confined to first, second, and third place. You know, like as a photographer working on this stuff on Orchard Street Runners finish lines for a decade, I guess. The way that people cross that line, like after you've done 30 miles or after you've done 10K as fast as you possibly can, like each person is celebrating as though they're in first place. Like the races that I see when I'm photographing aren't so much about first, second, and third as they are against yourself. You know, these what turns into mini races and then races with you. And I think like celebrating that, like the community finishes these things and the conversation, like we'll see it tonight at 3:30 on the finish line here. Like everybody is just glowing. And I think that like sharing in an environment, in a community like that, which isn't around, I don't know, a bar at 3:30, it's much better after a run.
I mean, my next question was sort of just, are we lacking something when we take away the competition element, or are we gaining something? I mean, personally, from the answers that I've heard, it seems like we are gaining something really special. But does anyone disagree? Is anyone missing sort of the time we're running was a competition and really just this performance sport?
I personally think that everything will have its kind of place and stage. When, for example, the OSR 30, which just happened last month, was really special. It was like kind of a confirmation, like Ash was saying, he kind of inspired this thought that the celebration is about finishing, not about where you finished. And for the OSR 30 was a very competitive, intimidating race, 30 miles around the perimeter of Manhattan. And this year it exploded in registration. And it was really populated by a lot of people just trying to push themselves past their own comfort zone. And all their friends and the community itself is there to support them as they finish. And it's just, the finish line shoot as they run down the street, it's just crowds on both sides. Everybody's outside just cheering on everyone finishing, no matter who it is. And each individual walks away with a really unique experience of feeling like they won, And that to me is something that will always have a place.
I think I can add just a little bit as a competitive runner. A little bit about my background is I ran Division I for Columbia University, and then I graduated and then got into competitive running in the city. And so through training, I ran a 2:31 in New York for the marathon, and then 2:29 as well, 4 weeks later in Valencia. And so I'm Mexican. For a while, I had my eyes set on the Mexican Olympic team for the marathon. And so that was my competitive path in running, and that was my goal. And then I found that through changing the way I viewed competition, through like a unlikely race at 2 a.m., where it's still competitive but it's different and it's more of a personal competition. So I wouldn't say it's like eliminating the competitive capacity of a race, but it's more just reframing it so that it's accessible to everyone, really. And especially now as I'm a trans person and I'm physically transitioning, so I had to kind of make that decision where I can't go to the Olympics, I can't compete in women's sports, but there are competitive spaces that I can still be in. And for me, that's like just a huge victory to the running community, is to still have competitive spaces that are accessible to someone that's in like a more unlikely path, for example.
And to give you a sense of how fast Sophia runs, they are very difficult to keep up with on a bicycle. So keep an eye out tonight.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I'm hoping for some pics of you tonight running. The next question is kind of geared towards you, Michelle, because you're sort of operating between fashion and sport, specifically running, two worlds that historically don't really mix. How does visual language shape the way people experience running today?
I think it has a lot to do with the aesthetics and identity. I just started running maybe 2 or 3 years ago, really recreationally. I always felt very insecure, and because I'm pretty slow, and so I always dressed really unassuming, didn't want to draw too much attention to myself, which is so different than how I dress in real life. And so I had this low-key running alter ego, and I feel like that running alter ego is now catching up to who I am now as a person, as running becomes more a part of my identity. And so I think that is really, it's really nice. And like, I think that fashion is catching up in the same way, like in the making something real versus just focusing on the aesthetics of it. Because again, I just feel like running is something that you can't really fake. Like, it is so personal, and it's about this like personal freedom and being able to like explore who you are as a runner. And I think fashion exists in that way too.
How do you think your like personal fashion in specifically running has evolved since when you first started to today? Is it different? Are you wearing the same things? Have you like learned, okay, form over function, or what works for you?
I definitely am very functional. I still wear like the running shorts that I wore in high school, and really stick to like just a running short and sports bra. But I think now I feel more comfortable exploring more colors, more textures. Like, I love mixing the different colors together, and I love technical fabric. And I think it's like just so fun to play with in my everyday life that now I feel more comfortable playing with it through running as well. And I love like running sneaker colors and like the different combinations people use.
I imagine it's also sort of a form of like motivation to actually go out there. It's like, let me put on
Yeah.
my cute running outfit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And like finding fun socks and like stuff like that. I think that like now running clothing has gotten really exciting too, and like really colorful, and it's really allowing you to like express yourself. So I like it.
I think this could be a question for everyone to answer, and Michelle, you touched on it a little bit, but how much of getting dressed for the run is functional and how much of it is culture expression?
I think I can add my 2 cents on it. I think for me, especially in being trans, a lot of expression is just survival in a way, because a lot of the clothes that I would like to wear, so if you go into the men's section, I'm short, so like the shirts are like all the way here. So a lot of it is just like cutting clothes up and figuring out what works. And then suddenly you turn around and the next person is also like running in a bandana and wearing a cut up shirt. So like you always, it is a cool thing to see where you can just run however you're comfortable. And I've always just kind of leaned into that a little bit, like what makes me feel good. So for example, while I'm waiting to get top surgery, I don't really wear shirts that show my sports bra because that makes me feel like a girl, and I don't like that. So it's just kind of learning how to make every day just kind of inconveniences in my brain just work better for me, so that I don't have to think about those things when I'm doing something that for me is fun, which is running. So the expression does come with the side of like, this is something that's necessary for me at the same time. Yeah.
I've stopped caring. Like I mean, after a mile, I don't give a fuck what I look like, what I'm wearing anymore. It's just like there's so much pain and exhaustion and overcoming that usually after I get hot and I'm running, so I don't really think about it. It's whatever's clean.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Joe, have you seen sort of any like shift in how people are dressing through Orchard Street Runners, and over the years, any shifts?
Yeah, well, one of the first kind of core memories about this culture kind of emerging in New York City was 2012 when they canceled the New York City Marathon because of Superstorm Sandy. There was a bunch of people in town from abroad, obviously, to run the marathon. And instead of doing that, we decided to party because there was no race. And I just remember the first time seeing her name was Nana from Copenhagen, wearing like a black dress to go out in, and she was wearing the fluorescent fly knits with it. And it just stood out to me that somebody combined fashion like for going out with running clothes of some kind, and it looked sick. And it kind of inspired me to start thinking in terms of that, like, you go out to party or you go out to meet people socially, and your clothes are an expression of self. It's like an identification marker for people that visually see you and what you're into or what you like. And running didn't really have those options at the time because the industry just wasn't that big, the markets weren't that big. And you had the cliche short shorts with, the cliche tank tops. And as the subculture grew and the brand started to see this market emerging, they started to contribute more designs, more ideas, more products. which gave us the ability to kind of create more identifiable combinations, whether it's, you know, you're into punk or you're into, I don't know, looking good or looking or dressing efficiently. These all became available over probably the last 15 years or so, I think.
Yeah, I love to see the involvement of fashion and running and the connection between also everyday wear. It's really interesting to me how much of like what you wear running, I guess, Michelle, like also affects your sort of everyday wear. Because I know you said how it was like kind of like a side thing that you were doing and it was like a different element of your life. Do you find that it's blended now or you still keep it separate?
Yeah, I think it's pretty blended now. I shop a lot of vintage too, and now I feel like I'm like shopping vintage activewear, which I feel like is becoming more of a thing too. And so I think that it has really like blended in just the same way that running has blended into my life. The style has too, where I'll just like wear running shorts with like a cute top and be okay with it and give myself the space to explore that.
Moving on to a new topic. Ashley, your work often frames the city not just a place, but as an active force. How does the urban environment shape movement, and how does movement reshape how we see the city?
It's rhythm and space for the runner and the photographs of the runners. I think I'm drawn to people who are getting lost in this moment. For me, one of the things that I love about this pursuit is that it's the one time that I can find a space which is just mine in my head. Everything else can melt away. All of my problems, all of my joys, everything, it's all gone. It's just movement and breath through whatever environment it is. So when I'm photographing, I'm looking for that in runners. People who are in that moment. Like, you won't find a lot of photographs of mine where people are smiling at camera, because you're now in this moment with me. I don't want that. I want you in the race. So this one's a good one photograph of that, because you're in the fucking race. Like, leapfrogging all the other, but that's what I'm looking for, someone who's got that rhythm as they can move through the city, like who are looking into rear vision mirrors of cars to see if a driver's thinking about turning rather than even putting on the indicator. Like, I'm looking for people who are looking 2 blocks ahead for potential potholes or pedestrians, looking like finding the line. And once you get into that space, the city becomes yours. And we share it with 9 million people, but for an hour or 2 hours or 20 minutes, it's yours. And I think that that's really, for mental health, but also for presence, that's really special. So that's what I try to photograph, how people feel in those moments, which often looks pretty messy because it's a messy city and it's a messy state to be in, honestly.
I mean, that's so interesting, and your attention to detail and being able to like preempt those moments is really interesting. Sophia, I mean, sounds like you've been shot by Ashley quite a lot. Do you want to speak a bit on that experience? Because I know he was speaking about how he doesn't want to be in the moment with the runner. So I imagine, is it a case if you finish the race and then you have all these photos of yourself you didn't even realize were being taken? And what is that like, having like your sort of journey in running be documented?
Honestly, I don't even pay attention, so I never realize what or when photos are being taken until after, and then the link is shared, and in the inbox there's like 5 different photographers that I didn't even realize were there, which is so crazy because there's basically nobody when you're out there running at 2 a.m. It's just the runners, so to miss the photographers is just kind of crazy to me also. And I think you're just in that space where you're right, the city is just mine for that amount of time. And in some way also with these races, because I go about them quite differently. And when I started running them, I didn't realize that people plan their routes. Because the way these races work is there's either a finish line or there's checkpoints, right? So the way you get to each checkpoint is up to you. There's no specific route, an exact way to get to each checkpoint. So it's really about how smart you can move through the city. I didn't know that. So I just heard like, oh my God, a race at 2 a.m. Like, I work in gay nightlife in New York. I will be there at the start line. And I show up and there are these guys in like super shoes and like running shorts and like really technical wear. And they have their maps like on their watches. And I was like, So my method is kind of like I jump from group to group and I try to like get to know a group of guys, and then I'm like, okay, like what's up? Like what are we doing?
You drop 'em.
And then, well, if I feel good, then maybe I'll move on to the next one. But it's also like, it's so cool. It's sacred, like with a moment with like
Yeah.
two strangers that suddenly like you're not strangers because you're literally suffering together. It's so special. Like I don't know that if there's words for me as a runner to describe it the way you photograph it, I think, yeah.
Yeah, it really moves me. Like seeing those moments, like I find it really moving. I love that. Yeah.
So next question. Do you think cities influence creativity, or do creatives reinterpret the city in their own way?
Well, for me, you know, when I started running, I was in my 20s. I never ran in track or anything like that. It was just something I did to stay fit. And real quick, my father used to take me to work with him at 2 a.m. when he delivered Italian bread through Manhattan. And seeing the city empty and kind of available to those that were willing to take it always stayed in the back of my head. So as I ran through my 20s into my 30s, and OSR started, I always saw it as an opportunity to kind of show people the way that I experienced Manhattan as a kid, having it to ourselves and moving through space. And it kind of birthed the idea of these types of races happening at night. We took the Alley Cat from cycling, that format of checkpoints, to kind of make it easier to execute an event without permits and staff and street closures. So for me, it was a direct relationship between what was available in terms of the context of the race, being New York City at night, and adjusting the race to fit that environment. And you know, throughout the years of doing it, evolved the idea to kind of become something else, something of its own. So it was a direct relationship, I think, for me as a you know, a designer of races.
I think for me too, like I grew up in Indiana and moved to New York City and started running to help me because the city felt so daunting and big. And when you start running through it and exploring all of the different streets and noticing things, it becomes so much smaller and it starts to feel more like home. Like I remember always running by like, I would run at night too, and I would run at like 1 a.m. and always running by this like bakery that would like open all of its doors, and there was always just like flour flying out of it, and just like loving the smell and like feeling like the city was like actually mine. And I think I felt that for the first time when I was running.
Ashley, what are you more interested in when you're photographing runners, people or context?
People. Always
Yeah.
people. And like there's no landscape to me that I'm interested in without a person interacting with it. Like I think we're responsible for a lot of these urban landscapes that I photograph, except seeing how people connect with that landscape is, for me, really inspiring. But it's an emotional connection. It's not, like I love photographs of runners from different styles of photographers, of course. And like occasionally you'll see like really amazing pictures, really graphic, you know, like a classic running advertisement. And I'm not going to shit on them. Like they're great, beautiful pictures. They're symmetrical. They're cool. The runner looks fucking on the upstride, looking cool and like hard and tough and everything. That's not my thing. Like I am about how it feels when the rubber is hitting the street. But the environment, I think, shapes that. I mean, what you guys were just saying, like every time I go out on a run, I live in the East Village in New York, and I'll often do the same route, just this easy 6-mile route. But every time I run it, there's something new. Like there's an adventure element of what we do, which it doesn't matter where we go, there's always something new. But then you turn that up to 11, and you've got like an Orchard Street runners race at 2 a.m. And it's like, fuck, the city looks like this? Like this is the same city that I've been living in for the last 20 years. And all of a sudden it's completely new. And that element of this sport and photographing this sport, every race is completely different, and it's so exciting to find it. And that's very much the city and how it interacts with the runners.
Feels like it's a bit of both. The runners sort of aid the creativity within the city, but the city also offers a lot of sort of creativity and difference. Like you said, every run is different. You're experiencing something every new running with the flower coming out the bakery, like all these beautiful key moments that aid your creativity is amazing. And then that's why I love New York as well. So if we look at cities like New York, running seems to create something very specific, unexpected connections between different social groups. Do you think running actually breaks down social clusters in the city, or does it simply create parallel ones?
I think maybe a little bit of both. You definitely see people showing up to my races and becoming friends that probably wouldn't have crossed paths otherwise. But you know, everything is so chaotic, sporadic, and random that there's space for it all, you know. And with so many different types of people doing different types of things, I've learned that there's an audience for anything. And you know, putting out my ideas into the world and seeing who saw them, who got the signal from them and came, it's always really interesting, and it's as diverse as New York itself.
I think for me, as just a runner in the community, I see a lot of parallel groups that don't necessarily always interact. And I think once I graduated college, I was trying to find what running group to join. And as I kind of tried everything very ignorantly, I had fun in every single group. I had fun at like my first OSR race, and then the ones after that. I had so much fun. And then like the track practice that I went to, it felt a little too close to college. But then you're surprised at how different these groups are and how they only associate themselves with their running group, which I think for me is just difficult to understand, because coming from somewhere that in New York, I work at nighttime and I'm literally raised by drag queens at night in New York, it's so crazy seeing how in these groups you go and we're all doing the same thing, but we're all doing them so separate, I think, is something that I realize with like the uptick in running as a popular thing now, as someone that came from more of like a competitive background, I think.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I feel like, Joe, what you said too about like how there's really like a space within running for like everyone, like maybe like the good and the bad. Like there is also like, I guess like the upside to it is that like you always like you'll always find your people eventually because they're all out there. So I feel like that's like the good part of it, is like you can trust that like you'll find like your niche and your people that you resonate with.
Totally. Like it's a little jigsaw piece that you're finding until you find the right group. I remember running and like learning how to run essentially. And then I joined with these guys a while ago, years ago, and there was a natural fit. But I guess I was still like finding my feet a little bit. And I went out on a run that somebody invited me to for like a New York City train, like what do you call it, a shakeout, with Lululemon, which I've never heard the fucking end of to this day. I didn't know. Yes, you did. You're the one who gives me shit about it. But I realized, like, okay, these are not my peeps. And then I go back to a Tuesday night with Orchard Street Runners, and it's like sort of misfits, but misfits in the best possible way. And I was like, I found where I fit, and there's something really special about that. Nothing wrong with Lululemon runners, but it just wasn't my place.
What's interesting about Ash and I is, you know, he's the photographer, I'm the race organizer, but we're cut from the same cloth with a different skill set. And being able to collaborate on races with Ash, documenting them, has exposed the feeling behind what the intent with these races always was. It's given people a visual cue to what they can expect if they participate, which I always had trouble communicating, but he kind of put the visual to it that does a lot of the legwork, I think, when it comes to awareness of these races growing and participation, which is, I think, very serendipitous or just kind of fate, one or the other.
I also think it's important, like once you're in your running group, to just realize that your people don't have to be the people you run with. Like that doesn't have to be your people. That can be the people that you enjoy running with, and you can have a completely different life. But as long as you enjoy running with them, keep running with them. But that doesn't mean you have to go out to the bar with them later. Like that can be with someone else, you know. I have my family is my nightlife family, is my chosen family, and they're the ones that are, you know, my people that, like, an emergency contact, for example, or like where I'll go key after a run. So like it's just different, but it's also just knowing like that's okay. That's okay too.
I'm sure you all had individual journeys when it comes to, because running can really be just like an independent internal sport. Like me personally, like I haven't gotten to the level yet where I want to run with people because maybe I'm scared I can't pace with them or et cetera. It's really like an individual thing for myself personally. So how have you gone from that shift of taking it to be such an independent sport to then running and finding community within running?
I think, again, you know, in 2012 or 2011 when OSR started, there was really bridge runners, and I went to bridge runners, and it was fantastic for a lot of different things. At the time, I was more focused on performance-based running, like wanting to go fast as far as I can. So I went and I attended, and I got a lot out of it, was inspired to create my own thing that suited my personal taste in running, my desires, my wants. And over the years, everybody started to kind of branch out and create that identity for their running group based on the individual organizing. And I just think that's one of the most beautiful things about the subculture and how it's evolved. And it's just interesting to me that if you're just starting or you feel uncomfortable, there's a group for that. And in attending that group, you will gain the confidence to go to the group that maybe is more your vibe, you know, and you just kind of like graduate from one element to the other.
Like we spoke about how running maybe isn't as much competition or about performance, but maybe there is an element of that through the run clubs. You start with one that's maybe for beginners, and you can level up and focus on different things. And I'm also sure, like, each week you can think of something different. You can be like, okay, this week I'm going to focus on performance and trying to hit a new PB, or next week I'm just going to go for a chill run and socialize, which I think is like really nice within the running community, that there's so many sort of different clubs and options. What do you feel makes a running community truly feel open?
You know, I think it's like, I see it with OSR a lot, so I'll speak about what I know directly. A lot of people over the years have said two specific things to me. One is, I'd love to come to a Tuesday night, but I'm scared. And another is, I'd love to do a race, but I'm scared. And that really kept a lot of people away for a long time, until like the first person that was scared did it and then told their friend, oh, it's not what you think. It's not intimidating, and it's not exclusionary if you're not fast. It's actually the opposite. You kind of gain the respect of the people you look up to in terms of their abilities, because they see you trying. And that's so relatable, I think, across the spectrum. So that's kind of your entry obligation, or if you want to be a part of it, you just have to try. And that is enough, you know.
I also think it's hard for every run club to be open, because each run club is so individual to their type of running. So it's okay to have a run club that's faster, and that's their thing, and they will do that. So I think it's almost not impossible, but it is very, very hard to just have a run club that's completely open, because running is such a pace-oriented activity. So it is hard to do as a group if you're not at that pace, for example. So like dividing it into pace groups, that's what we do when we coach Project Moonshot with Nike. So I'm a Nike running coach, and then every year we try to do like Project Moonshot, which is our New York Marathon training plan, if you will. But we do have different pace groups, right? So there's like, we divide it by what your long run pace is. So we have like the faster than 7 minutes pace, they're over here, and then all the way down to like 11:30 per mile pace, right? So it's just making sure that it's an option to join whatever pace group that you're in. But also it's a hard thing to do for every single run club, because some run clubs don't even have enough people, you know, to like make it that accessible. So I just think that as a whole, running should become more accessible, in that it should be an option, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Do you feel that the city has become more connected through movement? Do you find that it's bringing people together in a beautiful way, just beyond sort of run clubs in general. I know, Sophia, you spoke about sort of your nightlife and your day life, and running can also be separate, but have you found that it's also brought you closer to community and this form of connection?
I think so, yeah, because in the city, sometimes this has only been happening for the past year, but when someone says hi to me and I don't recognize them and they say, maybe you don't know me, and my brain goes to like, oh my God, did I meet you like on a run, like from Nike, or did I meet you like out at night, like in drag? So I sometimes have to make the connection quickly, but sometimes it's both, where it's happened where it's like, oh, I'm a runner and I saw you in a show I went to, and I've never met anyone that does both, and I didn't know that you could do that. I was tattooing at a bar and a trans girl came up to me and said like, oh my God, I just wanted to say hello because I've never met anyone else that is trans and runs and does drag, for example. So I also coach at Mile High Run Club, and I try to make my classes free for trans people, which I don't know if that's allowed, but I do like to make it just known that if you don't feel safe running outside, for example, or if like, I don't know, if you're a trans guy and you have top surgery scars and you don't exactly yet feel comfortable running shirtless out in New York yet, because you know, New York, you never know what you're gonna get. You can get lots of slurs thrown at you. That happens to me almost every single run, you know? And so I try to make my little 45-minute class where like music is blaring, like we're having fun. It's 45 minutes that are yours, and I'm just there to help with my little microphone facilitate it for you. And I've had a lot of trans people just say like, you know, it's the first time I run without a shirt off, or it's the first time that I wasn't scared to run in a sports bra, you know, as a trans woman. So like, just being able to provide that for me is very special as well in the way that I can.
That's amazing. We're going to talk about a bit more about the future of cities and urban design. So there's this idea that future cities could be designed around human movement. If we imagine a city like Manhattan in 10 to 15 years, fully designed to be completely runnable, what changes first, the infrastructure, behavior, or mindset?
Manhattan's already runnable.
I think it could be more runnable though. Like, think 10, 15 years, completely runnable. What's gonna change
Wider
first?
sidewalks.
Longer sidewalks?
Wider sidewalks. But I agree. I feel like it's very runnable, and the city has gotten used to runners as well, where I think that they're not as like, and as well as run clubs. I feel like in the beginning when there were run clubs, people were like, oh my gosh, there's like a horde of runners coming towards me, and you like kind of like freeze on this sidewalk and don't know what to do. And now like you're just kind of used to it, and it's like fun and inspiring to see other people running, and like I really like it. I'm not in a run club because I feel like I like doing the individual runs, but I feel like last night talking to Julia from Mental Athletic and like about how she runs like with friends as like a way to hang out, I found that really inspiring, and I feel like that's like my foray into running with people. But I do think the city is like, it's also what you were saying, Ashley, about like how there's always something to see and observe if you're curious enough. And I think that the city makes it exciting to run through.
I also think if we could change one thing that I would choose, it would be behavior, just because with so many run clubs and with so many people focusing on performance, which is good because again, I'm a competitive runner. I do think that with a city like New York, like if you moved there 4 years ago, you have to respect, regardless of when you move there, you have to respect people around you, you know? So like just because you have to run fast doesn't mean you can shoulder check someone that is like walking home with their groceries, you know? So I think before or the fear of being too slow when like someone might swear at you if you ruin their run. You know, like at the end of the day, we live in New York City, like no one's run is more important than the next person's run, bike ride, walk home, walk to work. No one is more important than anyone else. So I think by behaving in that way, we can make it more runnable by people that maybe don't feel fast enough to go on a run at a certain park or at a certain track, to make that not even cross their minds before going on a run, I think.
That is the world in which I want to live.
So what does a city built for humans, not just traffic, actually look like?
Well, I mean, I think we're starting to see efforts towards that, in that direction with bike paths and green paths and, you know, lanes being occupied by things other than cars. But I don't know to what extent a city like New York can evolve to favor the pedestrian, given, you know, the commerce and the businesses that exist there. You know, as over the years, one of the biggest changes I've seen are bike paths, but they seem to kind of be implemented mostly for corporations to deliver goods that have been ordered online or things like this, you know. So maybe in the future, they're eliminated from the equation and the bike paths and recreation paths actually get to be used for those things, you know. One of the things with OSR is it kind of goes unnoticed 99% of the time is we're not really a running group. We're more of a race organization. The reason being because I too find running groups, you know, all respect to the endeavors and what people do, but New York being where I grew up, there's a level of understanding I think that I've developed individually. And when I approach the city as an organizer of people and events, you know, the run group runs, weekly runs, they're en masse and they're taking up space and volume. The races, on the other hand, it's just the start and the finish where there's people together. So as you take off, it dissipates and it's not intrusive. It just blends into the flow of the city and kind of respects the fact that, like Sophia said, we're more important than anyone else. And I think maybe that's the evolution. It's going to be the way in which we organize and access the city. Because I think the city, you know, again, with commerce being the prioritization of every design they implement, it's a fight we'll probably lose.
Pivoting to inclusivity. It's a word that we use a lot, but we don't always unpack what it really means in practice. So when we talk about inclusivity and running today, what are we actually referring to? Access, representation, language, or something deeper than that?
Well, I mean, there's many characteristics of inclusivity that as I've moved through my career doing this, I've tried to address, one of them being implementing a non-binary category for athletes like Sophia to feel welcome and invited, trying not to do it in a way that's performative, which feels like a real challenge because I've never outwardly spoke about having a non-binary category in my events, which we've been doing now for 4 years. And the reason being because I want it to be found kind of naturally. I want it to be real, you know, instead of about it drawing attention to OSR or to me about, I want it to be something that someone discovers just like the original OSR and gets spread around through word of mouth. This way, everyone that comes is somehow connected to somebody that came before them, and it kind of keeps things simple that way.
I think of the things you listed, they're all equally important. You know, making it accessible, having the language that's there, and having running available. Because again, like I do appreciate and love seeing running becoming more popular, but sometimes with that it comes a lack of accessibility when really all you need is your pair of shoes and like you go. Like it technically is the sport that I think is the most accessible because you don't need equipment to do it, you know? And if you look at past Olympians, they're running in like streetwear shoes, like 225 marathons in streetwear shoes. So at the root of it, running is very much just a sport that everyone should be able to do. So it does pain me a little bit to see it become a little bit more limited edition, or like what you have and what you don't have, or like what you're wearing. Like all of those things definitely matter, but it is most important, I think, to make it more inclusive and accessible. So for example, like I loved, like in my competitive brain, I loved competing in the women's division because that's about my physical performance, right? And that had a lot to do with my running goals and how I stacked up to like other Mexican women in the marathon, and like realizing that I was faster than them, and I was like, in my brain, that was really cool. But at the same time, just because I could make that team doesn't mean it's for me, doesn't mean I should. So with that, I still love running. I still want to enjoy it, you know? And so like just because I'm in my hormonal transition doesn't mean that there shouldn't, like I just shouldn't be able to start a race, you know? So just, I guess eliminating certain barriers by just adding a category, for example, is just world changing, because then people don't have to overthink this activity that's supposed to be fun, you know?
How do you think how can we fight against that sort of access in terms of it not being so accessible because of sort of the fashion trends within running, or having the latest kit, and especially in communities, I'm sure some people turn up in what they have, again, an old pair of running shoes that they can just run in because that's all you need, or you have people coming in the latest kit. Is there sort of a challenge within that you try and sort of like keep the energy just super welcoming within the community? I mean, Joe can answer this, or Sophia, you can answer this. But yeah, how do we keep it feeling super accessible?
I think it's each organizer's obligation to look at themselves and kind of express through what they put out their inner thoughts and feelings about the world and the people around them. And for me, I've just always tried to use OSR as something that was for everybody, you know, and I don't know, you know, every little micro decision along the way, you know, has led to this current point, and I'm not really sure. It's just all feel in the moment of like what feels right, and that's kind of what I use OSR for. It's like, you know, in my world, in the OSR world, I'm the creator. I'm the one that makes the rules, so to speak, and I get to make that world what I wish this one was, and the success of that is subjective, but you know, for certain people, I think they, you know, if it makes them feel comfortable, if they're not intimidated by fast people, if they, you know, break through their inner, you know, reservations about whatever, then that's successful, you know. But I think it's so different for everybody that no one person could accommodate everything.
I think sometimes there are certain groups that feel they can't be a part of something, you know? And I think it's more than, as someone that is a runner, something that's more than anyone can come is me trying to find someone that shows interest, like a slight bit of interest, and I'm like, I would love to see you tomorrow at the run. Or like really just telling them like, I am asking you to come, like please come, you know? So for example, like it's really, really hard being a trans woman of color, which I have no experience with, but every woman I love that is my best friend, my mentor, my girlfriend, they are trans women of color. So just to see the different struggles, like for example, it's dangerous to walk around in a sports bra because in New York City, you can get slashed like by a guy that sees you as a guy, and that's dangerous, right? So sometimes it's not being like, you could if you wanted to, it's more like, hey, I see you and I'm inviting you to come to the space and I'll make sure that things are fine, you know? So that's what I try to do indoors, because it's like a safe running room where like no one can come in and hurt you. But I think it really, really comes down to just finding people that are different, that you have connections with, like genuine friendships with, and inviting them to these groups. And just because you're not a runner, like I don't know what that means, because I'm like, if you are actively running with us, that's good, right? So like it shouldn't be scary to go out and do this thing. That's like natural to humans.
It's like good attracts good, like good people attract good people, and that's how community is fostered, and you're gonna have the right people turning up to the races, because it's, again, people like Sophia out there really just giving access to her community, or their community specifically. So I think that's really beautiful to see that transgression.
I think on the
yeah.
fashion side too, it's interesting, like running through New York City and how I feel like New York City can be the great equalizer in a lot of ways. Like if you run on the West Side Highway or on the East River, it's like everybody's running in all kinds of different outfits. Like the Chinese grandmas and grandpas are like running in jeans on the track. And I think that it makes it feel just very like you can run in whatever you want if you're running in jeans, skinny jeans.
I love that. I feel like so like old school. Who do you feel is still left out of this space, even when we talk about it being so open and having access? Is there still groups that we feel are left out?
Yeah, I'd say specifically trans women of color. I quite literally know so many of them, and I don't fault them for being scared or intimidated to go out and like run. You know, it's hard when we call it passing. You know, if you like pass as someone that was born female, and unfortunately, not everyone has that luxury, and it is kind of unfortunate that is a luxury, you know, but it is just a safety thing. So I think with just making running more accessible, it is just making it possible and safe for more trans women of color, specifically in New York, to feel like they can come do this thing, you know, especially because a group means safety.
Right.
So like it should be running groups that provide that, you know, because it is scary to go out at whatever time of day and run. But if you're in a group, that's so much better. But I have yet to see anyone really like in the city that identifies as a woman of color, a trans woman of color. So it's just something that I think we as like individuals that have access to this kind of running that need to work extra hard on, you know.
So to close, I want to bring it back to something simple. If you had to define the role of running today in one sentence, what would it be? I think each of you could probably answer this.
You said the role of running? I mean, again, I think that is so individual to the person. I could speak for myself, like the role of the physical act of running for me is about, sounds stupid, I guess, but like exploring the insides of my head. The act of running transcends me to a state of mind that I can't access standing still. And it's only through a level of exertion for a long enough period of time where I can get to that state. And I literally call it kicking ideas around in my head, because that's what it feels like. It's a clearer way to think. So that's why I run, yeah.
It's to find nothingness with myself for one moment every day. That's mental health for me.
I think I'd say advocacy for me. The only reason I'm here is because I spent a year like running fast, if you will. It's like the only reason I ever accidentally stumbled upon my career in running. And so I plan to keep doing that to keep it, yeah.
I think for me, personal freedom, or just freedom in general. I love being outside, and I think that running has really enabled me to do that, similar to hiking too. Yeah, and what you guys said about like being in your own mind and giving yourself like that quiet space that I think is so hard to find now. Like running is like one of the things where I'm like, I'm not gonna look at my phone for an hour and a half, and it's a really, really good feeling.
Thank you all so much for answering all my questions. I think there's so many insights that we can all take home across many different topics of running and what the future of running could look like. So thank you so much for taking the time to answer my questions. And thank you all for coming. That's going to conclude our panel for the day. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Libero.